Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Before we get started, I just want to say that this webinar is being recorded, and we will send everyone an email later today with the link to the recording of the webinar and a copy of the presentation slides. First of all, I want to introduce ourselves. My name is Holly McHugh, and I'm a marketing executive here at BrightPay. For today's webinar, I'm also joined by Rachel Hines, who is the Marketing Manager at BrightPay. This webinar has been specifically designed for employers and accountants who are preparing for their move to BrightPay, and also those who are considering switching from their current software to BrightPay. During today's webinar, we're going to have a look at the challenges that businesses face when switching to a different payroll software. For part 2, we'll look at some key benefits of choosing BrightPay as your new payroll software, and we'll also explore some practical tips to prepare for your move to BrightPay to ensure a seamless transition. I'm going to pass you over to Rachel, who's going to start us off with the challenges that businesses may face when switching to a different payroll software.
Thanks, Holly. I think it's clear to say that the role of the payroll processor has changed dramatically in the past year. Whether you're an employer processing payroll in-house for your business, or an accountant or bureau processing payroll for a number of clients, payroll processors across the country have had an added workload this year. Payroll has been made even more complex than ever before, with furlough calculations and working from home. And on top of that, you also had to learn about the coronavirus job retention scheme and keep up to date with the many changes. In today's world of furlough and working from home, it's more important than ever for you to be able to automate payroll tasks. As we approach the new tax year, many businesses are evaluating whether they are using the right payroll software to suit their business. Having the right provider for your business is crucial and can mean the difference between a laborious payroll process that you dread every pay period and a quick and easy payroll that you hardly think about at all. There could be some other benefits too. You may be able to save money if the new system is cheaper than your existing software, but more importantly, you may be able to save time if you can automate payroll tasks. For some of you, you may be fully aware that you are losing money and opportunities by staying with your current provider, but you may still be hesitant to make the move. Unfortunately, the fear of switching to a new system may be holding you back. Some of the common objections that we hear here at BrightPay are there are too many different systems to choose from, it's not the right time to switch, importing the data will be too much work, or even it will take too much time to learn a new system. We do understand that moving from one payroll software to another can sometimes be a daunting task, but with preparation and by choosing the right payroll software, this doesn't need to be the case. So how do you choose the right payroll software for your business? The key is to find out what options are available and then explore whether or not they can make your life easier. But why should you choose BrightPay? Here we're going to summarize what to consider when switching to a different payroll software and the ways that BrightPay can make payroll easier for you. Here at BrightPay, a lot of what we do and a lot of the features that we introduce are designed to make your life easier. One of the ways that we do this is through automation, and BrightPay enables you to automate many payroll tasks to cut down on the administrative work, and I'm going to pass you over to Holly, who's going to give us some examples of how BrightPay automates payroll.
The first example of this is how BrightPay caters for auto-enrollment. BrightPay monitors everything in the background with on-screen alerts to help you along the way. For example, if an employee becomes eligible for auto-enrollment, you will see an alert to notify you that you have auto-enrollment duties to perform, and it will give you the various options available for that particular employee. Once enrolled, BrightPay also prepares the relevant auto-enrollment letter for each employee. Another way in which BrightPay can help by automating payroll tasks is batch payroll processing, and this particular feature is only relevant for accountants and payroll bureaus who process payroll for a number of clients. With BrightPay's batch payroll processing abilities, you can finalize payslips, check for coding notices, and send outstanding RTI and CIS submissions to HMRC for multiple clients at the same time. This will allow you to save time on manual, repetitive tasks, especially if you have a number of payrolls that don't change from week to week, or where a large number of single director companies are on the payroll software. I also want to introduce you to our add-on product, BrightPay Connect. And this has been designed with payroll automation being the ultimate goal. With BrightPay Connect, the payroll is still processed on the desktop application of BrightPay, but the payroll data is stored online on a secure cloud server. BrightPay Connect will automatically back up your payroll data to the cloud, meaning you don't have to worry about losing your payroll data. BrightPay Connect is designed so that employers and employees can log on to their own online self-service portals to access payroll information. Employees can also log on to a smartphone and tablet app where they can do a lot of the admin-heavy tasks themselves. Payslips are automatically available on the online dashboards without you needing to distribute payslips manually, and you can also streamline many HR tasks, such as managing annual leave, distributing HR documents, and communicating with employees.
Another way in which BrightPay can make your life easier is through integration. One of our newest features in BrightPay is the way in which it integrates with various accounting packages, including Accounts IQ, Free Agent, Cashflow, QuickBooks Online, Sage 1, Twinfield, and Xero. Instead of having to manually enter the payroll journals into the accounting software, they can be sent directly from BrightPay to your general ledger at the click of a button. Processing times will be much faster, as you will be able to submit data in just a few clicks. Another example of API integration in BrightPay is our integration with various pension providers. You can send auto-enrollment files directly from BrightPay to a number of pension providers from within the payroll software. This integration is available with Nest, Smart Pension, the People's Pension, and Aviva. Without that integration, you would need to save the file, log in to the pension provider's online portal, and manually upload the file. A new feature coming to BrightPay very soon is integration with Modular, giving you a fast, secure, and easy way to pay employees directly through BrightPay. This will eliminate the need to create bank files and the manual process of uploading the files to make the payment to your employees. The next thing to consider when deciding on a payroll software provider is how it caters for furlough. It has been a very busy year for payroll processors, and it's important to use payroll software that you can trust to keep you up to date with legislation changes. Just to give you a bit of insight into how BrightPay caters for the coronavirus job retention scheme, the software includes two independent tools to assist users who have furloughed employees. BrightPay has a furlough pay calculator to help users calculate an employee's furlough pay each pay period, and this includes support for flexible furlough, which is something that many other payroll software providers do not support. And BrightPay also has a CJRS claim report to make it easier for the user when making a claim via HMRC's online claim portal. In a recent customer survey, BrightPay's overall response to COVID-19 was rated 98.6%, and this includes payroll upgrades, webinars, online guidance, and customer support. Our hands-on response to COVID-19 and how we have helped our customers throughout the past year led to BrightPay winning a COVID-19 Hero Award for suppliers at the Accounting Excellence Awards. In particular, the judges recognised that we went above and beyond to support payroll professionals at a time when they were under pressure with furlough schemes and trying to interpret guidance.
If there's anything that lockdown and the requirement to work from home has taught us, it's the importance of remote access. I think it's clear to say that remote working will be part of the next normal, or at least a hybrid model of working some days from the office and the other days from home. Looking at how this affects payroll, in addition to being able to process payroll in the office or from your business premises, you now not only want but need to be able to access your payroll data from home. You also need to do so without the risk of creating conflicting copies. Although BrightPay is a desktop-based payroll software, all licenses can be installed on up to 10 PCs, and this means that payroll processing is possible by up to 10 users or from 10 different locations. This is very handy for if you have a number of employees working from home, all needing access to the payroll software. We are also introducing new multi-user features that work in conjunction with BrightPay Connect to improve the working from home experience. With this new functionality, when you open the payroll, BrightPay Connect will automatically check to see if there is a more up-to-date version of the employer file. In other words, where someone else in your organization worked on that employer, or maybe even you worked on the employer from a different computer. If a more up-to-date version is available, you will be given the option to download and use the most recent version, or you can continue using my version. There's also an other users check, where BrightPay will notify you if another person is currently in the employer file. You can be notified when the other person has finished, and it will also tell the other user that you are waiting to access the payroll. The second option here is to continue anyway. If you choose this option, it will notify the other user and prevent them from syncing any pending changes to BrightPay Connect. And this functionality uses both the payroll software and the BrightPay Connect add-on in tandem. So you need to be using BrightPay Connect to have this functionality. And I suppose the great thing about this new functionality is that it improves the remote working experience, giving you all the benefits of the cloud while using the power and responsiveness of your local device.
Next, we come to training, and it's important to make sure that you and your team are properly trained to use the new system. But really, with BrightPay, we have designed the software so that it's easy to use As long as you have a basic understanding of payroll, there is minimal training needed. The first thing we would recommend in terms of training is to book onto one of our free online demos of BrightPay. And these will take you through the process of running your payroll on a day-to-day basis. And it really does cover a lot of what you need to know in relation to BrightPay. As well as the demo, we do have hundreds of step-by-step guides and video tutorials on our website, and these will walk you through what you need to do in relation to the different features in the software. And this brings me nicely onto my next point, which is support. Payroll is one of the core functions of running any business, and so it's something that needs to be completed on time and without errors. If you have any problems, support should be just a phone call away without the need to pay extra for support, have access to only email support, or even having to sit through long wait times to get the answer you need. All BrightPay licenses include free phone and email support, and that's from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday, with the exception of lunch from 1 to 2 p.m. Outside of these hours, as I mentioned, we have an extensive range of video tutorials and online help guides on our website, which can help you with a majority of the questions that come through to the support team at BrightPay. Customer support is something that every business needs when switching to a different payroll software. Even if migration runs smoothly, chances are you'll have a question or a tricky issue down the line that you will need help with. A lack of support beyond the implementation phase is not acceptable, and neither is additional costs to avail of support.
Hidden costs are something to watch out for when you're reviewing different payroll software providers. With BrightPay, all licenses include full functionality at no extra costs. Along with the free customer support, you will have full functionality for auto-enrollment, payrolling of benefits, emailing payslips, off-payroll workers, and a CIS module, so you won't be caught off guard with any hidden charges. The only thing that comes at an additional cost with BrightPay is the optional cloud add-on BrightPay Connect, and the pricing for this is very transparent. With some payroll software providers, as well as hidden costs for essential payroll functionality, sometimes there might be hidden clauses in your contracts which tie you in, making it difficult to leave them down the line without giving them a lot of notice. This is not something we do here at BrightPay. There is no obligation to give us notice if you wish to go elsewhere. So while we're on the topic of pricing, I just want to quickly mention BrightPay's pricing structure. We have a standard license, which is for single employers processing their payroll in-house. And prices for this license range from £99 to £199 per tax year. We also have a bureau version, which is for payroll bureaus and accountants who process payroll for a number of clients, and the bureau license starts at £249 for up to 10 clients, or up to £499 per tax year, and that's for unlimited employers and unlimited employees. Prices are per tax year, excluding VAT, and each of these licenses can be installed on up to 10 PCs. And that's for the payroll software itself. However, as BrightPay Connect is an additional add-on, there is an additional charge for using it. BrightPay Connect is priced on a monthly subscription based on usage in that month, so you only pay for what you use. Customers are invoiced monthly in arrears based on the number of employees that you have on your payroll within that month. For example, if you have 10 employees on your payroll for a particular month, you would be paying just £3.90 for that month. Last but certainly not least, then, it is really important to go with a payroll software provider that you can trust. BrightPay is an award-winning payroll software with a 99% customer satisfaction rate. At the moment, our products are used to process the payroll for over 320,000 businesses across the UK and Ireland. And we have been developing payroll software for almost 30 years. We believe in offering a superior product that is affordable and reasonably priced. We also have a 60-day free trial, which is a great way for employers to discover just how easy BrightPay is to use without having to make any commitment. So just to note, the trial version has full functionality with no limitations on any of the features.
Next on the agenda is top tips for migrating your data. And probably one of the most common questions that we are asked is how long will it take to get set up or to import the data across from your existing software? This is really one of those how long is a piece of string questions, as it completely depends on your situation. Some companies might have a simple setup with only 5 employees, all on a salary and no pensions, whereas another user might be an accountant or payroll bureau with hundreds of clients, all with varying complex needs. It's also important to be aware that even after importing your employer and employee data, there are some pieces of information that cannot be imported and need to be set up manually. I can say, however, that for a company with 30 employees, the average additional setup would usually take up to an hour or two. Arguably, migrating your data from an old system to a new one is one of the most time-consuming parts of the job. Certainly, it's the most tedious. First, we'll look at preparing for your move to BrightPay. And as we mentioned, with the right preparation, it will make the transition to BrightPay much quicker and easier. Tip 1 is to check if your current software allows you to export employee information. BrightPay includes the ability to import employee information in a CSV format. Therefore, if your current payroll software allows the export of employee information in a CSV file or to Excel, which can be saved as a CSV file, BrightPay's import utility can be used. BrightPay also caters for the import of employee information using an FPS file if your current software allows you to access this. If your current payroll software does not allow you to either export the data using a CSV file or an FPS file, then the employee details will need to be set up manually within BrightPay.
So next is to allow yourself enough time. It is important to allow yourself enough time to perform an import before your next payroll run is due for the company. Performing the import well in advance of your next payroll run due date will allow you to review and check the employee data you have brought in and also to manually enter in additional employee information if required. Allowing yourself enough time is also particularly important if you are required to manually set up your employees due to your current payroll software not allowing the export of employee data as seen in the previous point. So as well as having enough time, it is also important to choose a convenient time to migrate to BrightPay. For most companies, the easiest time to migrate to a new payroll software is at the start of a new tax year, as this only requires the importing of employee details. As employers will start the new tax year with 0 balances, There is no requirement to import across mid-year cumulative pay information. However, if you want to move mid-year, then both employee information and their mid-year pay information will need to be imported. With BrightPay, you can import both employee and their mid-year pay information at any point in the tax year, should your current payroll software allow the export of such information. Make sure to select the option Continue part way in the tax year when setting up your employer details in BrightPay to facilitate the mid-year import. Going back to the previous point, if you are switching to BrightPay at the start of the tax year, make sure to give yourself enough time. It's easier to get all of the information set up in BrightPay sooner rather than later, so that you're ready to go from the start of the new tax year. Bear in mind that, like all companies in the payroll industry, it may take longer to get through to the BrightPay customer support team during the very busy period at the start of April. And so it will be easier for you to get everything set up so that you're ready to go on the 6th of April.
Another key tip to make the migration process easier is to familiarize yourself with BrightPay's terminology. Payroll software providers can often differ slightly on the terminology they use within the software. For example, what's known as a works number in BrightPay may be known as an employee number in another payroll software. Before performing a CSV import into BrightPay, it is therefore recommended to familiarize yourself with the terminology used in BrightPay and to find its equivalent in your existing software if it's different. This will help you at the importing stage when matching the columns to the data it represents, and I will include a list of the terminology used in BrightPay in an email to all attendees after the webinar. It is advisable to still have access to your previous payroll software when performing your migration to BrightPay. This is in case you need to create a new export file in your previous software. For example, if the employee data hadn't exported out correctly, or maybe the mid-year totals are for the wrong period. Access to the software will also enable you to cross-check employee data after the import. If your previous software license has expired and a new export file is needed, you may be left with having to manually set up your employee information. If you do still have access to your previous software, then a useful exercise is to run both your old system and BrightPay side by side for a period of time. This is a good way to determine that everything has been set up correctly in BrightPay and that there are no inconsistencies. Where you are running parallel pay runs, ensure that only one RTI submission is submitted from either your old system or your new system. Where you may see differences in statutory pay amounts or national insurance contributions being calculated by BrightPay, it's important to note both of these calculation methods. BrightPay uses the full statutory week method when calculating and applying statutory pay calculations. Therefore, if your previous payroll software used the pro rata method when calculating and applying statutory pay calculations, you may see a difference in this instance. And then in relation to the national insurance contributions, there are two ways in which to calculate NIC, and both methods are acceptable by HMRC. BrightPay uses the exact percentage method in its calculation of NIC, and therefore if your previous payroll software used the table method when calculating national insurance, you may see a difference in this instance.
And finally, tip 7 is to follow BrightPay's dedicated support documentation section on our website. Go to Support, followed by Payroll Support Documentation. You can use the navigation along the left of the screen, or you can also search for what you are looking for. And this is where you will find hundreds of step-by-step guides, not just in relation to migrating to BrightPay, but also in relation to various questions that you may have as you use BrightPay on a day-to-day basis. So here I'm going to search for Sage, and everything in relation to Sage will show up. You'll see here we have importing from Sage 50 payroll using a CSV file at the start of the year. And the guide for importing mid-year is here too. You'll see here we also have help guides in relation to BrightPay's integration with Sage accounting software for importing payroll journals. BrightPay currently has dedicated support documentation to assist you with migrating to BrightPay from Sage, Iris, Moneysoft, QTAC, 12Pay, Star, KeyTime, and basic PAYE tools. If you are migrating from another payroll software, you can refer to our support documentation on importing using a CSV file, other software, and importing using an FPS file, other software. It's also important to note that there is some information that cannot be imported and needs to be set up manually in the payroll software when switching to BrightPay. Pension schemes cannot be imported. Calendar information cannot be imported. Student loan deduction plans will need to be reselected. Attachment orders cannot be imported. If you have previously claimed statutory payments, you will need to enter this amount into the additional amount section in the HMRC Payments tab. Previous P30 information is not carried forward. Logos cannot be imported. Pay rates, additions and deductions cannot be imported. P11D information is not carried forward. Benefits are not carried forward. And employment allowance will need to be enabled in the software. So as you can see, there can be quite a bit of a workload involved, depending on the complexity of the payroll. But as I mentioned, once you have imported the employee information, the average time needed for additional setup for a company with approximately 30 employees would usually take up to an hour or two.
Now that you've seen everything in relation to preparing for the transition to BrightPay, now I'm going to jump into the software to show you how this actually works. Here we are in the payroll software, and the first thing that we need to do is create our employer file. We can choose to create a new employer, or depending on the payroll software provider that you are migrating from, you may be able to import much of your employer and employee data directly. The process is very different for each of these payroll systems, so please make sure you follow the help guides for guidance that's specific to you. For today's webinar, I'm going to create a new employer, and we just need to fill out the following few screens. First is, how would you like to use BrightPay? Start at the beginning of the tax year, start partway in the tax year, or continue partway in the tax year. And as we mentioned earlier, if you're moving to BrightPay mid-year, make sure to use the continue partway in the tax year option. Next, we need to add our employer name and address. And I'm just going to use a cheat key here to add dummy information. Next, we need to enter the employer registration information, so the employer PAYE reference number and the accounts office reference number. You can also tick the box if you are eligible for small employers relief. and whether you wanted tax benefits by payrolling of benefits or by P11Ds at year end. On the next screen, we can add departments that we want to associate employees with, but these are also optional. Next, we need to specify the settings for a typical employee, and this will be used as the default when a new employee is added to the payroll, but these can also be changed on an individual basis, so it's just the defaults that we wish to use. Here we have the various pay frequencies, the typical pay basis and the pay method, and we also have annual leave settings as well. So for example, whether we want the leave to be accrued, etc. Next, we have automatic enrollment. And here I need to let BrightPay know my next re-enrollment date. And this is so that BrightPay can trigger the automatic reassessment of employees when this date rolls around. And the final tab then, we can password protect the file and save and finish. You can store your file locally on your PC, or you can also browse to a different location, for example, a shared drive or server, or even to a cloud environment such as Dropbox. So this is the company now set up, and bear in mind that depending on if you have used the import method to set up the company, you can skip everything that we have done so far, as the information will be imported directly across for you. The next step is to import our employees. So if you have a new starter, you can set them up manually, but if you can export the CSV file or the FPS file from your current software, you can import all the employees at the same time. To import employee data into BrightPay from a CSV file, go to File, Import Export Data, and import employees from a CSV file. So now we need to browse to the location of where the employee CSV file is saved and click Open. Your employee information will be displayed on screen. For each column, choose the employee data it represents. And to assist with the column selection, you can select Match Header Row, and BrightPay will try and match as many columns as it can for you. And when ready, click Import. Here we now have 12 employees set up on the payroll, but it is also recommended that all employee details are reviewed before processing any payroll to ensure that the information imported is correct and applicable for the tax year in question. If you are importing employee data using the FPS option, it will only bring across employee information that is required by HMRC in a full payment submission, and so further manual entry may be required in each employee record for employee information that is not included on an FPS. So for example, email addresses, bank details, annual leave entitlements, department allocation. After reviewing your employee information, simply click the Payroll tab to commence processing payroll and set up your payment schedule. As we mentioned earlier in the webinar, regardless of the import option that you're using, there are some bits of information that are not imported that we need to add manually, and this is where it can get time-consuming depending on the setup of your payroll. One of the main areas that needs to be set up manually is auto-enrollment. We have an alert at the top of the screen for auto-enrollment, and if I click on Add Edit Scheme, it will bring me directly into the pension settings. It's very important to double-check the automatic enrollment settings to make sure that this is filled out. And we have already completed this when we were setting up the employer a few minutes ago. But if you imported the employer information, you may just need to enter this information manually. Next, you need to enter the details of your auto-enrollment pension scheme. Click Add Scheme and choose the relevant pension scheme from the listing. So I'm going to choose Nest, and now I just need to enter the details of the pension scheme. When the scheme has been added to the payroll software, we can go back to the Payroll tab to enter the employee's payroll information. BrightPay is telling us here that this employee is an eligible job holder, and it gives us the various options available for the employee. We can select Enroll if the employee is currently enrolled in a pension scheme, Postpone if the employee is currently in a postponement period. We can click Go if the employee was enrolled in a pension scheme but has now opted out or ceased, or we can mark the employee as exempt from auto-enrollment. To let BrightPay know that the employee is enrolled in a pension scheme, simply click Enroll, choose My Scheme, choose the tax relief, and Continue. And rather than doing this for each employee individually, you can do this for all eligible job holders at the same time. I'll select all employees, and now BrightPay knows that these employees are enrolled. As you will already have communicated with the employees, there is no requirement to provide them with any communication letters. However, BrightPay may prompt you to do so. To indicate that you have already communicated with the employee, click Letter, followed by Mark as Done for multiple employees. We also need to let BrightPay know what the situation is with our non-eligible job holders and entitled workers. That is, whether we have issued them with a letter, if they have opted in or joined the scheme, or if they are currently in a postponement period. Once again, I'll mark these letters as done. Now all the flags have disappeared, and going forward, BrightPay will assess employees in the background each pay period and notify you if you have automatic enrollment duties to perform. So for example, if a non-eligible job holder reaches the age of 22, or if their earnings go above the threshold. With auto-enrollment, there are two types of files that may be required by the pension provider, and one of these is an enrollment file. And this lets the pension provider know that a new employee has been enrolled in the pension scheme. If your pension provider requires an enrollment file submission, BrightPay will notify you that this needs to be sent. However, where the employee has already been enrolled previously, rather than sending them this information again, you can simply mark this as sent in BrightPay. If you are migrating to BrightPay mid-tax year and have previously recovered statutory payments in the same tax year within your previous software, these amounts must be recorded in BrightPay to ensure correct year-to-date figures are reported to HMRC when you next submit an employer payment summary. Likewise, if you are migrating to BrightPay mid-tax year and still have some employment allowance left to claim, BrightPay must be instructed of this and also of the amount you still have left to claim. This will ensure that BrightPay doesn't allocate the full annual limit again to you going forward. If you have already claimed your full annual limit for the tax year in your previous software, no action is required in BrightPay, and so in this instance, it is important not to enable the employment allowance in BrightPay to ensure that you are not given the full annual limit again. Other things to watch out for when migrating your payroll data include pay rates, additions and deductions, student loan deduction plans, attachment orders, and P11D information. Once you're happy that everything is set up correctly, the next step is to finalize the payslips. As payslips are finalized in BrightPay, a full payment submission will automatically be created each pay period, ready for submission to HMRC. In the event that the same FPS has already been submitted to HMRC, for example, if you're running the payroll in parallel and submitted it through another software, these submissions can be marked as sent and accepted by HMRC. And this will flag the FPS as sent on BrightPay, but the FPS file will not be submitted to HMRC. If you wish to use BrightPay Connect, it's important to note that the payroll isn't backed up automatically immediately. First, you will need to connect the payroll file to your BrightPay Connect account. To do this, go to the cloud icon at the top right-hand side of the screen and sign in to your BrightPay Connect account. Next, click Link to BrightPay Connect, and we just need to fill out the following few screens. Here we can decide when we want payslips and other payroll documents to be made available to employees. So we can say on the payday, or maybe one day before the payday, for example, but this can also be changed at a later stage if needed. Confirm the employees who you want to have access to the employee self-service, and make sure that an email address is entered. You can also mark a payroll as confidential. So if, for example, you're in a payroll bureau situation with multiple clients, you may wish to restrict certain users on Connect from viewing this particular payroll. And finally, link now. And going forward, the cloud icon will be green to indicate that you are signed in and your employer is linked to BrightPay Connect. While signed into BrightPay Connect, the employer file will be synchronized to the cloud to back up the payroll data every 15 minutes, and again when you close out of the employer file. And you can restore a backup at any time if needed. If you are not using the BrightPay Connect add-on, just make sure you are creating manual backups known as snapshots in BrightPay. It is always recommended to take a backup of your payroll to a safe location, for example to an external device, server, or cloud environment, rather than just to somewhere on your PC. And this ensures that your payroll data is saved elsewhere and can be reinstated in the event that you suffer a PC breakdown or crash. Moving back over to the cloud icon again, I can go to Employer Dashboard to access my online portal. And here we are in our online employer dashboard with BrightPay Connect. The first thing we come to here is the notifications. And the first time you log into Connect, you will have a number of notifications to help you get set up, such as inviting your employees to use the self-service, adding an email signature, and uploading historic payroll data if you are using BrightPay. Going forward, you will also get notifications, for example, if an employee requests annual leave or updates to their personal details. You'll see these tabs across the top of the screen, and I'm going to give you a very quick tour of what you can do in each tab. So the first tab here is Employees, and here you can click into each individual employee's profile to access payslips and personal details. And this is also where you can invite your employees to use their own self-service login. Employees will only be able to see their own payslips and information relating to themselves. The next tab here is Subcontractors, and here you can see any subcontractors that have been set up in the payroll along with their P&D statements. Next is reports, and any report that is set up and saved on the payroll software will be available for you to run payroll reports on your online employer dashboard. BrightPay Connect has a company-wide employee calendar to simplify annual leave management. And you can also add HR managers or department managers as users on BrightPay Connect so that they can manage leave and approve requests, but don't have access to any of the payroll data. HMRC payments also flow through to BrightPay Connect with amounts that are due to HMRC. And you can click into each individual month to view a full breakdown of the P30. Next is documents, and here you can upload any type of document that you want to distribute to your employees, such as an employment contract, a company handbook, or even the likes of a furlough agreement. The final tab is settings, and here you will find all of the settings that were on our notifications panel a few minutes ago. Or depending on your user settings, you may also have access to another layer of settings by clicking on this button at the top left of the screen, such as to add various users and their associated permissions. So that's the online employer dashboard. And as we mentioned earlier in the webinar, employees also have access to a self-service portal which they can log into on a smartphone and tablet app. And the app is available to download for free on any Android or iOS device. The employee will receive a notification on their device when a new payslip is available, and they'll also get a notification when a HR document has been shared with them or an annual leave request has been approved. Within the app then, the employee can go into Documents to view payroll and HR documents, including a full payslip library. They can go into the Calendar to view past and scheduled leave and request leave. Or in My Details, they can view and update their personal details to ensure GDPR compliance. So it's a really powerful app with self-service features so that the employees can do a lot of the admin-heavy tasks themselves, rather than coming to you, for example, for lost payslips or leave balance inquiries.
So Rachel has just shown you the setup process today, but if you want to learn more about running your payroll on a day-to-day basis, you can book onto one of our online demos. The demo will cover a lot of the features that we touched on earlier in the webinar, such as integration with accounting and pension systems, the batch payroll processing, the furlough functionality, and also how BrightPay works alongside BrightPay Connect with automatic backups and online self-service portals. If you attend the demo, you will be assigned a dedicated account manager who can answer any questions that you may have and help you through your decision-making and setup process, ensuring a smooth transition to BrightPay. We also have a migration team who can help you with queries in relation to the migration process. Businesses with 5 or more employees can avail of a free migration consultation, and the migration specialists can offer assistance where needed, but they do not do the full migration for you or move across details such as pensions, additions, deductions, or pay rates. The migration slots are fairly booked up over the next few weeks. If interested in a migration consultation, please do let us know. There may be some last-minute cancellations. If the migration team are fully booked up, you can contact them by email, or of course the BrightPay support team may also be able to assist you. Either way, between the content of today's webinar and the help guides that are specific to your current software, you shouldn't really have any problems with the migration process. We will also send you on an email later today, And this will include all of the relevant help guides that we mentioned throughout the webinar. And we will also include a link to the recording of the webinar so you can refer back to it, and also a copy of these webinar slides. We have now come to the end of the webinar, and we're not going to answer any questions live during today's webinar. I can see there's so many questions that have come in, but every company is different in terms of how their payroll is set up. If you have asked any questions, a member of the BrightPay team will contact you as soon as possible to answer your questions directly. A survey will automatically pop up when the webinar ends, so please type in any further questions you may have, and we will be in touch. But that's it from us, and thank you for joining us for the webinar, and we hope you found it useful. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.